But what I wanted to start with is a video that you guys voted on. I give you a couple of suggestions about where to start, and the most popular one was a video about how to get started decluttering when you're overwhelmed. I completely understand that. I was there a few years ago, not knowing where to start. I've not done it yet. I need to come in and do a little video about my story and why I got started on this. But um, I essentially was a hoarder a few years ago. There was a lot of trauma from my childhood and young adulthood that I struggled to cope with, and that basically led me to become a hoarder with my household possessions, as well as many other things, which I'm sure I'll touch on in future videos. But I became very depressed with the lifestyle that I'd gotten myself into, and I reached a point essentially in my life where I needed to make changes, otherwise it wasn't going to work. And I felt completely overwhelmed in the first few months of getting started. So I completely get why this was a popular video choice, because before you make the steps into getting a clutter-free life, it can be quite daunting. And there can be different things that make you feel overwhelmed. So it can be either the amount of work ahead of you, and for me that was definitely part of it. As a hoarder, I had a lot of stuff, and I lived in a small 2-bed flat with my husband, and there was a lot of stuff packed into that house. And just to kind of give some perspective, we moved when I was pregnant with Annabelle, which is my eldest daughter, and she's 9 now. We moved from a 2-bed, very small flat into a 3-story, 5-bed townhouse, and I pretty much filled up that house with the stuff that was in this very small 2-bed flat. So you can imagine how cramped that flat was. But yeah, so I had a huge amount of work ahead of me to sort through stuff, and then also I had a huge amount, like a lack of time to sort stuff. I was heavily pregnant at the time when we moved, had a newborn baby, and then once I finished my maternity leave, I was back in my corporate career, very busy job. So there was two kind of problems there: so much stuff to sort out and very little time to do it. So I understand that decluttering can be really overwhelming. So this video really is me talking through some suggestions about how to get started, because once you get started, you can start to feel those benefits. You can start to see the difference in your home, feel the difference in your mind, and it starts to become much easier. But sometimes that first hurdle is the most difficult to get going, because let's be honest, decluttering your home can be a lot of hard work. It's physical work for you to sort through, to move things around, to reorganize things, sort things that you're getting rid of. Are you going to sell them? Are you going to donate them? But also it's a lot of mental and emotional work as well to make those decluttering decisions, because clutter is as a consequence of delayed decisions. And then suddenly you're making a lot of decisions at once, and you're having to sort through a lot of emotions of that stuff that you have ended up keeping in your life, and that can bring up a lot of emotions, and it certainly did for me. And there's lots of different, we've all got different situations and scenarios in this group. So there'll be lots of different emotions that come up, and there's lots of different reasons why we hoard stuff, and why we keep stuff, and why we can't make those decisions to get rid of them. So physical, mental, emotional, there's a lot of stuff going on there. So it's understandable why it's overwhelming, especially when you've got to make those decisions about what to get through. So today's video really is going to be about giving you, how many tips have I got? I have got 7 tips about how to get started clearing the clutter, so you can reclaim not only the space in your home but the time in your life as well, because there's so many benefits to decluttering. It is I'll do a video on that as well, about the benefits of decluttering, because I think it can be severely underestimated sometimes, the impact it can have. And I think that would be a great topic to talk about. Anyway, I digress. But you're going to be able to reclaim your space in your home and reclaim the time in your life, so then you can choose to do things in your life that bring you joy rather than sorting through stuff. So whether you're struggling to get started decluttering, or you've already started decluttering and you're feeling overwhelmed and you're just struggling to keep going, I'm hoping these 7 tips will help you either start your journey or continue your journey, and just use these ideas and strategies to make the process of clearing the clutter easier for you. I want it to be less stressful, I want it to be less overwhelming for you, because I know the benefits of it. You can get the work done, you can create a home that not only looks lovely but it feels lovely, and that for me is the most important. I'm not bothered whether I live in a show home and it looks fantastic and people go, wow, isn't it a beautiful house? It's more about how it makes me feel, and that it functions in a way that works well for me and my family. That is the most important. And that's what I want you guys to get. That's what I managed to get when I started the process, and that is why I've started this group, in order to help you guys do this as well. So let's dive into the tips. Number 1 is have a clear why. Now, I'm going to keep coming back to this time and time again because it's really important. And if you have been on the workshops with myself and Kate Bitson, where we've done the Declutter Your Life workshops, I know a few of you in this group have been. You will know what I'm talking about here. But when you're undertaking a big project like decluttering your home, or even decluttering a certain area of your home, it might be your loft or your garage or anything like that, knowing your why is essential for you to get started, because you really need that clear understanding of why you're making the changes you are. And that's going to keep your motivation up to get, not only get started, but keep going as well, especially when it starts to feel difficult. You get to some emotional items. Having that why and knowing why you're doing it is super important. So what you want to do is really figure out exactly why you want to clear that clutter and simplify your home and simplify your life. Is it for you to spend more time with your family, with the people that you love, with your children, that you're able to spend less time doing the housework and more time creating memories, for you to feel less stressed at home trying to keep up and manage the house, to create more time to get back to a hobby you love, create more money and freedom to travel. Like, what is your why? It's different for all of us. For me in particular, it was more about my mental health and creating more time and space in my life to process a lot of grief and a lot of trauma, because I was getting lost in my clutter and using that as an excuse to kind of not deal with stuff from the past. And that is really what I wanted to do. I wanted to make sure that I didn't have anything to distract me from that, so I could process stuff. And ultimately what it led to was me becoming so much more happier and able to start a career that I wanted to. I became self-employed and started a career that I've always wanted to do. I've got a daughter running around screaming, so hopefully you can still hear me okay. So whatever it is, you need to know exactly what's driving you to want to make this change and why you're in this group. Why do you want to start decluttering? And keep coming back to that whenever you feel lost or you feel overwhelmed or you just need that little boost of motivation. It's really important to have that. And if you have been to the workshops with me and Kate, what we typically do is get you guys to create a vision board where you rifle through lots of magazines, just like these ones here, and you find visual nice images or words that mean stuff to you, that really hit home as to why you're doing it. And we get you guys to create that in the workshop. You take it home and you put it up somewhere prominent in your home, whether it's on your kitchen in the fridge in your kitchen, or on your above your desk, wherever you want it to be, to have it prominent to remind you why you are doing this, to keep you motivated to keep going and get started as well. So number 2 is have a plan. Now, some people may go, what's the point of having a plan, because I just won't be able to stick to it anyway. But having a plan actually is something that will help you to get started, because a lot of the time the unknowns that come with doing a big project can make it feel really overwhelming and stressful. So then that stops you from advancing in it. I am a big planner. It is something that probably has got me stuck in the past, but when it comes to decluttering, it has been a bit of a lifesaver for me, breaking it down into little bits, because when you're looking at it as a one whole big project, seeing that can be very daunting. Whereas if you break it down into a plan, it's going to stop you from stressing. It's going to help you figure out the unknowns that you may not have known as you were going along. And help you plan the steps that you'll need to take to start reducing those feelings of overwhelm that you get thinking about the project as a whole. So when you are deciding what your plan is going to look like, you need to think about things like when you're going to declutter, which I'll touch on in a moment, what spaces you'll tackle and when. And I'm actually going to do a separate video on that, because I think there's enough meat in that to create a separate video for you. So when you'll declutter, what spaces you're going to tackle and when, what your goals are and visions are for each of the spaces in your home and your whole home in general, and also what you're going to do with the stuff that you're getting rid of as well. Because it's all well and good saying that you're going to declutter, but what are you going to do with the items that you're going to eliminate from your house? So what I always recommend is to take a few minutes, even do it today, take action today, and sit down with a cuppa, take 30 minutes and think about your decluttering plan and go through it, so you can avoid just some of those common decluttering roadblocks about not knowing what you're going to do with all your clutter items at the end of it, where you're going to start having that knock-on effect. So for example, what I need to do at the moment, I bought myself a new shoe cabinet, and that is going to go into my dressing area of my bedroom. However, there's a unit in there that I need to move already, so I need to sort out the space that unit is going to move into, and then so it has a knock-on effect. And sometimes when people start decluttering, they forget about that process, and then it makes it more difficult to just get that going and get it into the right order. So what I'm going to do after this video is I'm going to include a link for you to download a free decluttering plan that I've got, and then you can make your own personalized decluttering plan, because whatever a decluttering plan looks like for me could be very different to Jane down the road and Sandra up the street. It's going to be very unique to you. So I've got a downloadable that is free that you can print off or do it digitally if you prefer, to get you thinking about how to get your plan into place to get started. So I'll pop that in the comments when I'm finished the video. And number 3, what you want to really think of decluttering is forming it as a habit. So doing a little bit of decluttering every day means you're going to make much more of an effort to remove that clutter. Consistency is really important when it comes to decluttering. It's much more important than the intensity of the decluttering, and what I mean by that is that consistent effort to remove the clutter from your home regularly is really going to give you better results than if you've done a massive decluttering project once or twice a year. That being able to keep on top of it and keeping it consistent and getting into that good decluttering habits going to get you you're going to get into practice really, to spot and get rid of clutter. I've done so much decluttering since my journey started that actually it's just something that is part of my day-to-day life now, that if I spot something that I'm like, oh, that's gonna just turn into clutter, I get it out the house immediately. It's not I try to reduce, obviously, the clutter coming into my home. And I personally very good with that, but I have got a husband and two children who aren't necessarily fully on that same wavelength, and clutter still comes into the home as much as I reduce it, and it's certainly less than what it has been in the past. It does come in. It's a natural thing of having children and having a working family home. I mean, my kids come home from school with lots of paperwork, and my husband works from home as well. So it's one of those things that it just is a natural thing, and we've got into habits to reduce that, and which I'll obviously talk through in these videos. But as a working family home, it does happen. So having consistent effort to remove the clutter from your home regularly is going to give you better results than doing it in lots of bulk, and it's going to make it easier and easier for you to clear the clutter as you go on, because you're breaking it into little chunks rather than going, oh, I'm going to have to spend a whole week on doing this, rather than doing it in smaller bites. And that's what moves me on to number 4, which is about making time to declutter. So if you know you need to declutter, which is why I presume you're in this group, and as I did mention in my video, this group isn't essentially fully about home decluttering. It does cover just life declutter in general, but it is one of those things where I'll be touching on different types. But if you know you need to declutter but you don't seem to have that extra time to get it done, it can again make it feel really overwhelming. And that was one of the problems I had in the early days, is that I had so much stuff to sort through, but I had very little time with a newborn baby, full-time job. So sometimes what I would do, instead of waiting for time instead of waiting to find time to declutter, I made time to declutter, and what I had to do is just to let go of some things temporarily to make time to declutter at that moment in time. Because let's be honest, we always find something else to do rather than decluttering. We'll go, oh, I'm too busy, I can't do that. But it's always the thing that keeps coming back to it. I'm like, oh God, like it's such a mess, I need to sort it out. But I'm going to pop to the shops, or I'm going to go and do this, I'm going to do that. We make excuses not to deal with it. Everyone is like that. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's one of those things that just we do. So what you can do is just plan to do some things differently for a short period of time, knowing that it's not a full-time change, it's just a temporary change. To use that time to do some decluttering instead. So you could say that you are going to, instead of cooking a meal, you're going to get a takeout once a week, and instead of using that cooking time to just chill out, you could spend that half an hour, 45 minutes that you would have done cooking to do some decluttering instead. I'm not advocating getting big pizzas or anything like that. I mean, I probably would, but if you're worried about health, feel free to get a healthy takeaway. Or what you could do is just say that for the next 2 weeks, I'm going to do very little household chores. You can say, I'm not going to wash the windows for a couple of weeks, and instead I'm going to use that time block of an hour to shift my focus and clear clutter instead. Or you could say that you're going to give your kids a little bit more screen time for a couple of weeks, to focus on the decluttering, or skipping yoga class for a couple of weeks. And it's, yes, some of these things you're like, oh, I don't like the sound of that, I don't want to let my kids have more extra screen time, or I don't want to miss yoga because that's important to me, or that is fine. But just pick something in your life that you can cut back on for just a little bit of time freedom, that even gives you 10-15 minutes a day to do some decluttering. Because one of the things I find is that people will find excuses to not do it, so you need to make space in your life. One of the biggest things that I say to people, because preferably you wouldn't cut out the yoga, you wouldn't do that because it is something good for your health. What about doing something like cutting out 15 minutes of scrolling time on your phone? I get alerts on my phone about how long I'm spending on it. I've slowly over the years cut that down. And actually I can get a hell of a lot done when I'm not scrolling on my phone. So what I've done is removed apps from my phone, and I spend a lot less time scrolling on it these days. And then I've managed to do lots of crafting activities, or I've done some home sorting out, some things like that. So is there something? Start with the things that you feel that you're spending negative time on, and remove those. But if you feel as though that everything is in your life because you want it there, then really start to look at what things could you temporarily move to make that difference. And just remember, it's not going to be forever. It's just giving yourself some extra time to focus on that decluttering now, so ultimately you feel better in the long run. And as I say, you'll be able to return to those things in the past if you want to. You might find that you don't. And you're going to have even more time after that, because your home is going to be taking a lot less time to maintain and take care of. So you're going to get that double bonus at the end of it. So that was number 4. Number 5 is think about donating instead of selling. So if you've got a lot of stuff to declutter and you might be feeling overwhelmed about that, you might want to make it a little bit easier for yourself by donating a lot of your items rather than selling them. When I first started out, I did a lot of selling. I was using eBay, Gumtree, Facebook groups. And actually I made quite a bit of money. I made a few £1,000s from getting rid of a lot of my clutter. But it did add a lot of extra work. So if you are struggling with getting things done and you end up having piles of things around the house that you're trying to sell, but you just never get round to, then consider donating. What you could do is that you're going to only sell larger items, more valuable items, and the rest of them you donate. It does, as I say, take a lot more time and energy to sell items, which can add a lot more work onto your plate if you are feeling overwhelmed. So if you don't really need the money from the things to sell, donate what you can. Just make it quicker and easier and less overwhelming for you. And also think about the benefit. If you're giving them to charity shops, you're donating to charity, you're helping out other people in need as well. So that is a consideration. As I say, I did do a lot of selling and we made quite a bit of money from it. But if that is something that you're not necessarily bothered about, consider making it easy for yourself and donate things to people rather than selling. Number 6 is don't organise until you declutter. And this is one of the biggest things I see people doing. Trying to organise clutter is just going to waste time. It's going to waste money, and it's going to make you more overwhelmed and less motivated to keep going, because you're organising stuff that you're not going to keep and things that you're going to need in the future. So stop wasting time organising and spending money on containers and bins and baskets. Just eliminate things first. So I am a fan, I've left them downstairs. I'm a fan of organising bins. I love them. I've got them in my drawers and in my kitchen cupboards. They keep things organised. It makes it easy, but I don't bring them into my home until I've decluttered the items in that space to begin with, because what's the point of organising things that you just actually don't need? I love organising. It makes your home more efficient. It makes things faster for you. My kitchen is so much more efficient when I put those organising bins in, because I know what I've got. I know when I need to buy things when they're low, because I can see them. I can find things much easier. All my spices are in the same place. It just makes the whole cooking process so much more efficient and easier. But declutter first. Get rid of the clutter first. It's going to be easier for you to then get organised. It's going to make it easier for you to keep it tidy, simply because there's less stuff. And yeah, so don't get excited. I know it's hard. Like when I go to B&M and Home Bargains and they've got all these lovely fancy containers to organise, and sometimes I think, oh, they're pretty. But yeah, try and refrain from that. Do your decluttering first. See what you've got, what the space is needed, what kind of containers you need to make it easy for yourself, and then start to organise after that. Then number 7 is focus on the positives. So even when it feels hard, decluttering is a really positive thing. So by clearing the clutter in your house, you're giving yourself more space in your home, more time in your life, more energy, and more freedom. And ultimately, you're creating a home that's going to be easier for you to take care of and maintain. And you're making a home that makes you and your family feel good in. A home is supposed to be a sanctuary, it's supposed to be a haven. You want to feel good in that space. Having lots of clutter can really drain you. So by sorting it out, it's a real big positive for you to do. So just keep reminding yourself of those positive things, especially when decluttering feels hard. So if you do choose to do something like a mood board, like I mentioned in number 1, have that in a prominent place. If you're feeling really overwhelmed and stressed with it all, just come back, look at that mood board and just go, right, this is why I'm doing it, this is what I want. You want to make the decluttering process feel as nice as it can be. So what I like to do when I'm doing decluttering is I'll put on like one of my favorite podcasts. My husband loves audiobooks, he loves listening to music. Have a glass of wine while you do it. Like, just make it something a bit more enjoyable. Don't sit in a really quiet room and just dredge through it. Like, have some nice music on, put a film on or something like that, and have a nice snack and a drink with you while you're doing it. And then when you've finished it, reward yourself with a treat. So ideally something that's not going to add more clutter to your house. You say, oh, if I finish this, I'm going to buy myself 10 new purses or something like that. Try not it to be something like that, but something like you're going to, if you declutter the bathroom, you're going to have an amazing bath with candles afterwards or something like that once you've reached your decluttering goals. So do what you can to make it really fun and enjoyable, because I'm not here to fluff it all up. It is difficult. I wouldn't set this group up if it wasn't difficult. If it was easy for everyone to do, we would just get on with it and we wouldn't need the support. I wouldn't have a job. So it is a difficult process to get started with and to maintain it. So just try and make it as enjoyable as possible. And then the last thing I suppose I need to say is that if you're really struggling with it and you can't get started, the other option is as well to have someone guide you through it, and let someone help, like, lead the process. You make the decisions with this person, but that person holds your hand and helps you make those decisions and do it for you. And that's why you've got people like myself or other professional organisers who specialise in home stuff. In the past, I have been a professional organiser. I have been in people's homes. That is where I started. I'm more kind of online digital coaching now, but so you've got people like me who do it virtually and can support you, or I can come out to your home, or you've got people, specific professional organisers who can do it as well. So that's always an option for you if you're really struggling to get started despite looking at these 7 steps. So hopefully that was useful. I'll just cover each of the 7 steps very briefly. Again, I'll go through them. So the first one is have a clear why. Make sure you know why you're doing it and keep coming back to that. Number 2 is have a plan. I'm going to include the link in the comments to download my freebie, which you can start to create your own plan with. Number 3 is make decluttering a habit. So don't start to just think that you're going to do it all at once. Just try and do little and often. Number 4 was make time to declutter. So what can you eliminate out of your life temporarily while you sort this stuff out and make time for it rather than pushing it to one side consistently. Number 5 is donate instead of sell. You don't have to sell everything. Think about what else you could do with your items that you're decluttering, and there's a section for that in the decluttering plan that I'll pop in the comments. Number 6, don't organise until you declutter. So leave organising for now, focus on the decluttering, and then come to those nice bins and containers that you can get at a later date. And then number 7, focus on the positives. So really just keep going back to that why, remember why you're doing it, and plan little rewards in for yourself. Plan how to make it more enjoyable for yourself. Get a new audio book and say that you're going to, every time you listen to that, you're going to declutter. try to make it pleasant for yourself. And then if it's really bad, you're really struggling to get started, look for some professional help. So I'm hoping that was useful for you. I haven't seen any comments come through or questions, so I will come back to you if you do have any. Pop them in and I can come back and answer them. As I say, I'm going to make this a weekly thing. Today's video has been quite long. I didn't mean for it to be this long, but once I get started talking about decluttering, I can't stop. But I'm hoping in the future it'll just be 10-15 minutes. Next week's video, I'm going to continue this theme about how to keep it less overwhelming, and I'm going to talk about strategies of different locations where you can get started to make it a bit easier for yourself. I always say don't start by diving into the most difficult place first, so we'll cover that topic in next week's video. As always, if there's anything that you want me to particularly touch on, I can dive into any of these points a little bit more deeper if you want to, or if there's a particular topic that isn't directly related to this, let me know in the comments and I can do a video on those. But until then, I'll be back next week live with my next video, but I'm going to be in and out this group all the time, so if you've got any questions, comments, any wins that you want to share with the group as well, feel free to. So have a lovely Monday. I will add this link now and I will speak to you next week, if not before. Take care, bye bye. And now I can't end the video. There we go.